a contrast to the cities, because the cities, they were all filthy. I mean, most of these cities up to the Middle Ages were lacking any sewage pipes. It was filthy. Many pandemics arose from these cities, and arose from these cities. They were, and to that, in contrast, was the countryside with lush green. It was considered uh, nature, pure nature, unadulterated nature. It was considered as roots, as origin, where people derived from, and the blue mountain sky, especially from the European uh, side. And then with the industrial age, of course, there were even a bigger contrast between cities, because in one instances you could say that in cities you had some sort of depravity, or some sort of exploitation, filth and so on. Whereas in the countryside, despite the fact that there were still feudal systems, that you were nature bound, and for that matter closely held by, and this was indeed the case. In the industrial age, you could feed yourself better in the countryside than in the city, because in the cities there were mostly miseries, and of course cities later on, after after those revolutions which did away with feudal system, and then opened up for other cultures. For example, the French Revolution granted citizenship somehow to Jews and Protestants, and they opened up to other cultures. Cities became some sort of a melting pot of cultures, influence of other cultures and foreign tradition, partially cosmopolitan and so on. And then in contrast was the country, the countryside, with the people of the countryside, especially the French Revolution. They made themselves some sort of independent. They had would own their land, and the countryside then not only became the place for health and healthy physical conditions, of healthy nutrition and so on, but as well as the preservation or the preservation of culture, of roots, of of of, of racial and cultural purity. And this was indeed very important, or became very important with the rise of nationalism and the geographic location of one's country. I mean, of course, this is a bit different in the US, because in the US there is not this bond to the country as in Europe, and Germany is some sort of, or German nationalism is a bit different as well, but nevertheless, this justification, or this boundary to the ground, to what you found, became of course very important, especially in a war-torn Europe, because war was always on the agenda. We said it before, Europe was a very bloody continent and so on, but then it became even further, or it was then made even more important through colonialism. I mean, there are indeed some philosophers who wrote about nature and the correlation of human appearance, even with wits. I mean, there were even some prominent philosophers who play to this very day a significant role, and they wrote, for example, that the climate and the environment one human grows up, or a special race grows up, would reflect their appearance as well as their psyche. And then later, during colonialism, uh, Europeans came in contact with other cultures, especially with the tropic cultures of other parts. I mean, North America again was an exception. However, and then they saw themselves and created themselves as different to this foreign culture, because Europe was considered as the dominant, as the pure white region with lush green, cleanness, serene, and very importantly, the cold weather. Uh, and whereas those other countries, they were considered dry, hot, filthy, and so on, especially when they are overcrowded. And you have to be aware of one thing, and this is a fact. I mean, this is if you live in a very cold area, especially with winter where the ground freezes. This is some sort of a protection against any bacteria and so on. So cold kills a lot of bacteria. So it is partially a protection, and in other regions, I mean, for example, there are some regions in the world where there is no difference between summer and winter, or where the difference is just minimal, especially the closer you came to the equator. So in these tropic areas, then this is indeed some sort of a consideration. And then, of course, with the whiteness from a European point of view was then associated with the country, with purity, with, with blue mountains. This is very important. From blue mountains, then are derived blue eyes, then some sort of lush green lush green or unadulterated uh, regions, clean regions, and the white skin and so on. So they said indeed, so considerations of landscape played indeed a crucial part, and still to this very day play a crucial part, especially you want to say in Europe, European nationalism, and as well as they define whether someone is alien to the country, to the landscape, or is an inhabitant, a native. I mean, of course, this was not the sole source. There are always many sources why we think about this. I mean, why this been considered as more pleasing than black. And another reason is because of day and night. I mean, especially the human eye struggles in darkness. I mean, you have to be aware. Back in the days where there was not much light, it was not like today's cities, or even the countryside where you are never or where you are never been left in darkness, not even in the countryside. I grew up in rural Austria. Even in rural Austria, you would have street lights which would be shining all night long. So you are never being left in total darkness. Nevertheless, this was not the case in previous days. So then darkness was always some sort of scary point. You were not protected from dangerous animals. I mean, one great advantage of mastering the fire by humans was actually to keep safe, or protect oneself from dangerous animals. And this black and white, this then played a crucial role in mythology in mythology and in all considerations between good and evil, because evil is always this unknown. This is in darkness. This is especially from an European point of view. Please remember, in other cultures, black and white have a different meaning in other. But however, in European culture, because of darkness, because of this history, darkness or is always or partially considered with death, disease, funeral attires. People wear darkness. It is being considered with night, with danger, but as well as with evil. So the everyone imagines hell as a dark place. It is even been sung, and in contrast, heaven is always portrayed with whiteness, purity. But of course, whiteness is as well as considered with purity and as well as with a beginning, like think of a wedding two people find each other, but it is considered as a new beginning, whiteness, and so on. So this has indeed some sort of this origin, and this has kept to this very day. There are some association with black and white. If someone dresses completely in white, or for whatever reason, this is always considered or attributed with certain ideas, and one of them might be danger or whatever, or if you want to, it is emo culture and so on, Gothic, for example. And then, of course, another source is this is a very popular. This is the source, especially starting with the rise of the picture and so on, and with in the art scene, as well as how divinity are portrayed, how Jesus is being portrayed. He is being portrayed as white, blue eyes. I mean, despite the fact, if you see where Jesus was born from, where he came from, it was no way that he looked that way. However, but it is still part of this heritage, this portrait, and especially, I mean, because Christianity after the rise of the Islam was pretty much confined to Western Europe, especially Catholicism, and as well as an Orthodox religion. However, and there it is being said that God created humans from his own image, and when Jesus is the Son of God, then God must look like him, and so on. So ergo God would be white. But this and this image of Jesus, or this religious imagery, played always a crucial role. It is to this very day. It is very present that divinity is portrayed as whiteness, and this some sort of leads people to assume that there would be a natural order of races, and that this would be some sort of would be justified because of some portraits of some pictures. So do not underestimate the influence this divinity. I mean, it is not only Jesus, but in general angels and so on. I mean, you would not assume that there is a black angel. At least I did not see, a portrait one. But if you see those Christian Catholic churches with all these saints, how they are being portrayed or how they are being depicted, then you see, of course, this is about whiteness, or that they are mainly whiteness, and that this leads then to a role model and how they are being considered, how they are being viewed, and this has, of course, led to horrific exploitations, to especially in colonialism whatsoever. So and to this very day, it leads partially to racial justification, that there would be innate or divine order structure between the races, and you can see this, prove this whatsoever in the